everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Jackie. I am a part of the We Schoolhouse team. Most of you are, if you've been following, you're familiar seeing my colleague Stephanie's face. And today I get the opportunity to present to you an introduction to the Reggio Emilia approach, and I am so excited to do so. I am going to share my screen so I can bring up my presentation. So this will be an introduction to the Reggio Emilia approach. There's so much that we could go into. So I will do my best to briefly introduce you to the history, some key aspects, and the power of those aspects and why they are so beneficial to child development and learning, and to community. So the Reggio Emilia approach grew from Reggio Emilia, Italy, and it was cultivated by Loris Malaguzzi. So post-World War II, in the 1940s, this small town in Italy, the families, this community, they wanted to create childcare that was more progressive, that truly fostered more critical thinking for their children, for the future of the world, and they wanted more community involvement. And Loris Malaguzzi, who was a trained psychologist and a trained educator, came to this town, and he was very taken and inspired by their initiative. So he jumped on board for the project and led it, and cultivated this approach and named it after the town. And in the decades to follow, we've seen this approach be embraced by the rest of the world, and it continues to do so. Some key aspects that we will be looking at today are that the child is at the center of the learning. It is a very child-led approach. The use of open-ended materials or loose parts, project-based learning, the learning environment, documentation, embracing community, and the teacher as a learner. And you'll see as we go through it that all of these aspects are very intertwined with one another. And as you can see, the photos here, you'll see a picture of the town of Reggio Emilia. That's Loris Malaguzzi on top, and that's him working with a child in a classroom. So, the child at the center of learning. Stand aside for a while and leave room for learning. Observe carefully what children do, and then if you go, the Reggio Emilia approach, an intro to the Reggio Emilia approach. Again, we're going over the history, the key aspects, and the power of those aspects and the power of this approach. The approach came from Reggio Emilia, a small town in Italy. So you can see now the photo up top is Loris Malaguzzi, our founder of this approach. And below him is the town itself. And then below that photo, you see Loris Malaguzzi working with the child in a classroom, way back at the beginnings of this approach being generated. Again, a child at the center of learning, open-ended materials or loose parts, project-based learning, the learning environment, documentation, embracing community, and teacher as a learner are some key aspects that we will be going over today, all of which are very much intertwined. So the child at the center of learning. Stand aside for a while and leave room for learning. Observe carefully what children do, and then, if you have understood well, perhaps teaching will be different from before. So we see the children as competent. They are full of wonder and intelligence, and we see children as capable of constructing their own knowledge. It is extremely important as educators that we sit back and we observe the children as they are at play, as they are at work. And we do this so that we can observe the 100 languages, which is a term coined by Laura Smalaguzzi, and it is meant to be a metaphor for all the different ways that children express themselves, verbally or non-verbally, and the ways in which they navigate the world and learn. We believe that, following Laura Spalaguzzi's beliefs, we believe that all children have unique and limitless ways of learning about the world around them. And we want to observe those ways so that we can tap into them. And then following that is the emergent curriculum. So this is a curriculum that is designed per the unfolding development and learning and the interests of the children. So as we observe these 100 languages, we want to dive into investigations and activities that reflect what we are seeing in the children. Now, in order to do this, we need to allow for the space and the opportunity and the time for these 100 languages to unfold. And one way that we can allow for space and opportunity is through the use of open-ended materials or loose parts. What children learn does not follow as an automatic result from what is taught. Rather, it is in large part due to the children's own doing, as a consequence of their activities and our resources. So we as educators provide loose parts, but what are they? It might be easier to ask, what aren't they? Because there are so many things that we can utilize as loose parts. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We don't have to go out and buy the most expensive of toys that light up and make sounds. We actually don't want to do that. We want to use natural materials, upcycled pieces. Don't throw away your cardboard. Hold on to tin cans, wood, even plastic, synthetic materials. Blocks and Legos are also great examples of loose parts or open-ended materials, and pieces of fabric. The list can go on. But why do we use them? We use them because they offer child-led, open-ended, and unstructured play, which then unveils how they learn, so that we can better observe their development taking place. It also allows for more holistic learning. As the child engages in this play with open-ended material, it can lead into such an array of direction. It allows for discovery and exploration. It allows them to utilize their imagination and their creativity. It allows them to innovate. It allows them to create their own narrative, their own story to their play, and come up with questions on their own. It is coming from the child. Also, it hits all domains of development because it is not closed-ended. It can go in so many directions. So, for example, playing with loose parts and blocks and constructing with them. This offers discovery of concepts such as shape and size and balance. How do I balance these items as I stack them up? Or what kind of representation am I trying to create? Trial and error, problem solving, practice and creativity, planning and design. It can also become social dramatic play. If a child is building with blocks and they are creating a castle that houses a royal family of animals, their imagination unfolds. It also serves physical motor development as they build and they construct with small materials and larger materials, and some materials have weight to them. And of course, there's social, emotional, and emotional well-being. when they are in charge of their learning and they are making the decisions of what to do with these materials, it helps build their confidence. It helps them have autonomy over their learning, and it gives them conviction in their interest. It gives them confidence in their decision making. It gives them confidence in experimentation and in asking questions. We set up provocations. So these are intentional. They're an intentional arrangement of materials that are meant to provoke curiosity, engagement, and discovery. So a provocation can be an array of loose parts that are inspired by a book that we have read together. It can be inspired by an investigation. Maybe you're doing an investigation on Arctic animals, and so you put out loose parts that are themed with different Arctic animals and things that are that could be representative of snow and ice, and you let the child do as they wish with them and build with them. If you're in an investigation of water, it can be a sensory water bin with materials for pouring and scooping. So there is intention behind it, but they are open for the child's play. And it is meant to provoke that curiosity and that engagement. A provocation doesn't always have to be loose parts either. It can be anything that is open-ended to asking questions and to discovery, like taking a trip outside. It can also be a book. So the possibilities are really endless. And there's also the atelier. So many schools, many Reggio Emilia inspired schools will have an atelier, or a workshop, which is a space dedicated to this open-ended play, these open-ended materials, offering that opportunity for exploration, discovery, creativity, innovation. You'll find things like clay, paper products, building materials, a light table, and a whole array of loose parts. And children come together and they work in small groups with an atelierista, who is generally a teacher with a background in the arts, and they work together to create. Now, using open-ended materials and setting up these provocations, that allows for that space and that opportunity for the 100 languages to unfold. It opens up the space and the opportunity for more holistic learning. We also need time. We need time. We can't just stick to that theme of the week and then we're done. We need time to dive into project-based learning. That is long-term learning. So following the child's interest, we dive into an investigation for a month or more, 2 months, however long we need at a time. We follow the child's interest, and the children work together. They learn together. It is a collaborative experience. It allows for deeper understanding of concepts, of the theme itself, and it also allows for more skills to be acquired. So let's imagine there is an investigation in botany going on in your classroom because the children are really into plants. Maybe it's springtime and new flowers are emerging and they're super interested in it. You will read books about plants and flowers and vegetable gardens. You will create art with flowers and with natural materials. You'll go out into the park or whatever outdoor environment you have available to you and examine the environment. You might plant some seeds and watch them grow. You might create some sensory bins with soil and gardening tools. You'll paint pictures of gardens. You'll create your own garden. What would you put in your garden? The possibilities are endless. There's so much you can do with this investigation. Why limit it to such a little amount of time? go for long, repeat different activities because repetition is so important. Let the children come up with ideas of what you can do together. Have them work on a mural of a garden together. Let them learn together. Let them make decisions together. There are more skills acquired in the more that they do and the more various ways that they engage in a topic. They'll learn more vocabulary because they're learning all the vocabulary you can think of and you can incorporate around gardening. They will learn such important social, emotional skills as they work together. Project-based learning is such a huge aspect to Reggio Emilia. Remember that this approach came from that community initiative. Loris Malaguzzi often said that the approach is like a building that they built together. It's a structure that they have put together. And with that, I want to also go into the learning environment. So that's another important piece to the Reggio Emilia approach is to consider the environment as the third teacher. Right? We have the child, we have the teacher, we have the family, but the people involved. We also have the environment, both physical and social. Our environment needs to prioritize well-being and emotional well-being. So it should be neutral. It should be warm. It should have reduced sensory overload or intentional use of sensory. So you'll see a lot of Reggio Emilia classrooms, they're not overloaded with all that color. There's soft tones. There is color. Color can be important, but it needs to be utilized intentionally and it can't be overloaded because that just becomes overstimulating, which is going to disrupt the learning that can occur. It also should be reflective of the learners. So one key being furniture that is appropriate for the size of your children, materials that are at their level and accessible, materials or images of their work and the children themselves up at their eye level. It's also driven by documentation. So we'll get into documentation in a minute, but that's such a huge piece as well. And you want documentation of their learning to be visible to them. And it's reflective of the community. So you might have a family wall up in your classroom, again, where the children can see it and engage with it. And reflective of the greater community and the environment. So you may have aspects of your neighborhood, inspiration from your neighborhood in the environment as well. It could be photographs of your environment in the block center. There are many different ways of doing this. Even history of your community. I've met with educators who, their Reggio Emilia school, the building used to be a church. And so they kept aspects of that church within the structure when they converted it, really paying homage to the history of their community. So you can do it in greater ways like that or in more subtle ways. But you want to reflect the community in the classroom because the children should know they are part of a community greater than just their family and their school. Oops. And documentation. So again, our observational notes are so important as we watch the children play with materials, engage with materials, and play with one another. We are utilizing our developmental checklists. We're utilizing assessment tools and developmental guides, and we're taking notes, anecdotal, informal note-taking all the time. Find a system that works for you. If you're writing in a notebook or if you're doing voice notes, find a system that works for you because you want that documentation. It's going to guide your practice in the days and weeks to follow. You want to see what areas of development am I seeing unfold? What demonstrations of different skills am I seeing unfolding or not unfolding? Where do I need to support my children as they learn, as they grow, as they develop? Also, what personality traits am I seeing coming out? Where are their interests? How do they learn? Are they more visual, tactile learners? What overstimulates them, or where do they need more stimulation? You're watching the children objectively, and you're taking notes on what you see. What are they expressing? Furthermore, as they create art, as they build structures, write down what they say about it. This logs their thinking. And what you can do with that next, you can put it up on display for them. Celebrate their work and their learning. This is where documentation becomes so beautiful in Reggio Emilia. I like to say, think of it like an art gallery. You really want to honor the learning that has taken place in your classroom, save artwork, put it up with the dialogue you've jotted down. What did they say about this art piece? Why is it special to them? What are they trying to convey per their words? It's reflecting the learning back and celebrating that learning. And it's for the children, but it's also for you as an adult, because this, again, this documentation will guide what you do next with them. It's also for the families to see how their children are learning and what's happening in school, and they can engage with it as well. And with that, we also want to embrace people and places within a community. So we really want to put emphasis on collaboration between the schools, the families, and the children, and the greater community. We want to prioritize communication with families so that their insights on their own children can guide our practice, right? The families know their child best, and we need to learn from them. We want to be culturally responsive, so we also need to learn about their family and what values they have. We need to work in partnership with one another as a school, as a family, the child. We are all learners together. We are partners together. We also want to allow the child to learn from the environment and community that is around them. So again, reflecting the community in their learning environment, even diving into investigations and reflection of their environment. Engage in questions around their neighborhood and community. You know, what do the children observe? What do they see? What do they wonder? Who do they see? Who is around us? What is around us? And what can they learn from it? What questions do they have about it? And what can they contribute? Again, always celebrating the fact that they have a role and place in society. We have to, again, always remember that Reggio Emilia came from a community initiative. And it is valued that we are advocates, just as the way back in the 1940s when this town was advocating for the future of their children. We have to advocate for the future of our children, for the future of our communities. So we are involved in the community in any way that we can be, and that that may look for you. Teachers and educators as learners. So thank you very much for being here today, because part of the Reggio Emilia approach is the mindset that we are learners as well, right? We are ever seeking out professional development. We are engaging in discourse around our work and our practice. We also as we work with the children, we learn alongside them. As investigations unfold, we learn too. Um, and we learn about the concepts, and we also learn about the children and what they need, and we learn about our practice. We grow as educators. It is a practice, so it is ever evolving. Um, no one is a perfect master or expert at the field, because there's always more to learn and more to do, especially as society unfolds and changes. Um, and we work in partnership with families and the community, and therefore also learn from them. We're always learning from each other, alongside each other. And again, we have that mindset and that condition of determination to grow. Um, so that's all that I have for you today, as we will follow up with a deeper dive on the child and on the environment and the community. So we do have time for any questions. I would love to answer any questions or any discourse that you have. Um, let's see. I have to, but I'm sorry. I am still learning this, so I have to find out where I can see the questions. Here we go. What arrangement provokes curiosity? So that is, I mean, that's open to what you have going on in your classroom. I mean, you have to see what your children are most curious about, and then you want to get materials that support that curiosity, that engage that curiosity that they have. There's so many ways of going about it, and there's really endless answers to that question. When planning a curriculum, what if the children moves on to a different direction or curiosity? What do you do? That's okay. That's okay. It's meant, the whole purpose of Reggio Emilia is meant to be flexible and to follow those changes. Listen, we're working with young children. They don't have long attention spans. It's not developmentally appropriate to expect long attention spans of them. So if they start to go in a different direction, just follow that, and it's okay. If they're done with a certain task at hand, that is okay as well, to move on into it. It's okay to move on into a different direction. Okay, elaborate on the term 100 languages. So that, again, it's meant to be a metaphor. It's meant to be a metaphor that there are so many different ways of expressing where our interests lie, of communication in general, but also where our interests lie. So if you are watching a child play, and they are, say they're building with, they're working with loose parts, and they're building people with those loose parts. So what does that tell us? It tells us what kind of representational skills they have. It tells us that they're interested in creating these these people. Maybe they start telling us about, they start creating a scenario for the people. So it tells us what kind of interests they have. So there's interest in socialization. What is the scenario? Maybe it's a family. They're interested in families and family dynamic. Maybe maybe the people that they're building are community helpers. They're interested in like the roles that people have in a community. That's just an example. But there's so many. You want to pay close attention to what are the children um, demonstrating to you as far as their interest. Also their personality type. They could be quiet, on the quieter side, which is absolutely okay. But how do you engage them in ways that don't put them in uncomfortable social situations if they're not ready for it? Everything you observe in the child tells you how to work with them. And that is what it means by the 100 languages. It's what they do, what they say, how they act, how they engage with their environment. All of those demonstrations are telling us something about them. Um, so the key, okay, what's the key pedagogy of Reggio Emilia? What's a key feature of the teacher's role? I would say a key feature to the teacher's role is definitely that observation. Um, you you can be a facilitator, and we are in so many ways in the scaffolding questions that we ask, in the materials that we provide, in moments when we jump into social dramatic play and we take on a role ourselves, but we're not the directors of the classroom. It really is, it's the children. The children's are the directors. They are leading, and we have to follow their lead by observing and taking notes so that we know what their needs are and what their interests are, and we follow that in our emergent curriculum. How do we approach Reggio Emilia for infants and toddlers? What kind of activities are good for them? So definitely a lot of play with loose parts and other open-ended materials for infants and toddlers. Um, Engaging with the adult especially as well, because we are social beings, and that's such an integral part of early childhood. But allowing them to play with materials without our direction. Um, Allowing for mess. Um, it they're going to make a mess, and that's okay. There's so much benefit to it. They're gonna, knock over the blocks, and they learn about, physics really with that, and the power of cause and effect. They are going to smear paint everywhere, and that's going to offer sensory input. And they're also learning about the physical properties of paint and what happens when you smear it and how it feels. Um, the so the activities for infant and toddler can be so simple. The materials so simple, but they go such a long way. And I would also encourage repetition of these use of materials. Um, Reggio teacher visiting the US got really upset when someone mentioned that children led their learning. She was adamant to correct it, saying that the teacher do teach. Um, I would say that I guess I can see misunderstanding in that, because the teacher is a facilitator. Um, I guess some people might misunderstand child-led approaches as, the children just do whatever they want, or um, the children make the curriculum, and the teacher doesn't have a role in it, but that's far from the truth. We are facilitators. We design the classroom. We offer the materials. We plan and prep activities, and we work with the children. We just do so with respect to the children's needs and their interests, as we have observed. So I wonder if there was a misunderstanding somewhere in there. I'd love to hear a little more about the story of how this started in the original community. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to dive into with that, and it really is a beautiful story. That's perhaps something that we could further put together for you. Um, it is really inspiring. So I will look into that. What are some good tools for documentation? What format do you use? So I've always been a big fan of having a developmental checklist prepared, and just really anecdotal note taking. I often would walk around my classroom with a clipboard that had, the activities for the day, but then loads of empty space where I could just write down all of my anecdotal notes as the children were engaging in different activities and materials that I had made available to them for that week. So yeah, anecdotal note taking, but also referencing those developmental guides along the way. How do you recommend beginning a long-term project? You start simple. You start simple. So, you can present ideas to them. You can present an investigation to the children and see how they take to it. Or, you might present, I'm going to go back to the example of botany from earlier. You might present, botany or plants as an investigation to them, and you see that they're particularly interested in vegetables. And so then you kind of take off in a direction of vegetables and cooking and farms. But you're following that interest. So again, someone asked earlier, like, what if their curiosity diverts in other directions? That's okay. You start simple and you follow where we go from there. Start simple, repeat activities, and go over concepts more than once, and do keep it simple for them. How is Reggio Emilia? Sorry. So this is a really good, okay, this is a really good question. Sorry, the questions are bouncing around. Oh, there we go. Okay. With only 2 teachers, how do you take time to write notes and documents? So this is a struggle. I really, really empathize with it because I was also a teacher in a classroom and I was the director of a school, and I know how hard it is. Um, I, sometimes I would use, voice notes. If I really had to do a fast note taking. I also had my clipboard, and it was chicken scratch on my clipboard, but that's okay. We also had a notebook that we would rotate. You're multitasking here. You're sitting back and you're observing the children, both you and your assistant or your co-teacher, and you both know you're on the same page, right? You're a team. You've discussed that this is your role in the classroom, and you're both taking your notes as you can, while also working with the children and conducting the routines, facilitating those routines of the day. It is a challenge. It's not easy, right? Our work is not easy. It is beautiful and it is amazing, but it is not easy. But yes, those little notes as much as you can. Voice notes used to help me a lot. Is technology part of your inquiry and project-based learning? How does that look like? So yeah, I mean, it totally can be. So we live in a world that technology is ever more taking over. So yeah, you can totally use technology in appropriate ways. You can also simplify it, when you're really working with the younger children, and ask questions like, well, what is technology? It's the innovation of using tools. It's using tools to you know make our lives more efficient. So technology doesn't have to be a computer, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to be electronic devices. It can be, the use of tools, with really young age groups. And then as you get older, into older age groups, preschool, there are different ways of utilizing things like projectors. I love an investigation on light and shadows and reflection, because there's some really cool ways to incorporate technology into that. Recordings, I mean, you can bring in technological materials like recorders, playing different ways to play music. You can play around with technology. Absolutely, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a computer though. Where? So someone's asking about, um, I think they're asking about trainer accreditation for delivering this pedagogical style. So There are a lot of opportunities for learning more about Reggio Emilia. I had colleagues that were you can actually go to the town of Reggio Emilia and they do conventions, and it's amazing. I had colleagues that were there last week. Also, joining today is a great way to start as well. We do offer certification for attendance. And thank you for asking that. Continue to seek ways to learn more about Reggio Emilia. How do you teach children to respect the environment and/or toys? Modeling. Modeling is my number one answer for that. Modeling. Also, recognizing that some of the behaviors you may see are not demonstrations of disrespect. It's just them engaging and exploring their environment, but you can model how to do so in a non-destructive way. And also, show them how much you love the environment and you love your learning materials. And they'll start to learn and appreciate it too. Your sense of wonder and respect will inspire their sense of wonder and respect. Um, um, what kind of assessment tool can we use to make a document? There's so many available. We Schoolhouse has some developmental checklists. There's also some other more formal assessments you can use, but developmental checklists and developmental guides are a great one to use for reference. For a school just starting to be inspired by Reggio, what is a good way to introduce kids and parents to the work? So conducting your own research for one, and seeing, ways you want to implement Reggio. It's a lot. It might feel like a lot to take on when you're new to it. But you know, do some more research and find tools and resources. We Schoolhouse does offer some, and I would maybe hold a meeting with families to talk about what you're taking on. Definitely remember you want to have that collaboration. You want to embrace community. So work with families to educate them and to work with them on establishing or taking on a more Reggio Emilia approach. Um, yeah, and just keep researching to find more resources on, what kinds of loose parts can you utilize and how can you set up your environment. Again, We Schoolhouse offers a lot, so we'd be super happy to be a resource for you. Let's say we have no control of the classroom as I have to switch for art class. Let's say we have no control of the classroom. Okay, so I think this question is leaning into like classroom management, like structuring that classroom management and transitioning from one part of the day to the next, which is very important, right? So as much as we are advocates for child-led play, unstructured play, using that open-ended materials, we also need to have a structured routine to our daily schedule, and we need to have planned transitions. There is intention in every step that an educator takes, every moment, every minute of the day. So I would say, as far as not having control of the classroom, I would go back to planning out that schedule of the day and how you transition from one routine to the next. Are you utilizing any songs? Is your direction clear and simple for the children? Have you prepped the children? Do you have an attention grabber? This really goes more into classroom management, which is definitely a topic we will be diving into. But yeah, that's a big one, and it is a huge challenge, and it's so important. And there are a lot of ways, strategies that you can use to help keep that structure, that safe structure for your children. That helps make the day more efficient. What are some ways to strengthen my documentation process? What are some notable moments to take note of? Dialogue is always really important to jot down what are the children saying, even if they're just engaging in self-talk, or maybe it's they're discussing, if they're in collaborative play, what are they saying amongst each other? What are they doing? If they're not talking, what are they doing with the materials? Again, objective. You want to stay objective and just write down what you're seeing and hearing. But yeah, what are they stacking the loose parts? Are they creating an image? Are they ripping the paper, crumpling it up? I mean, literal things like that, because that's telling you what kind of sensory are they maybe seeking, or what kind of, you know, are they trying to create something? Are they trying to just kind of figure out, well, what does this material do? So any kind of anecdotal moment like that, jot down. Okay. Our school implemented the Reggio Emilia approach this year. In the early childhood center, we have pre-K through first grade. Of course, we always want to look for improvement. How do we keep track of growth? Ooh, where to go? Okay, how do we keep track of growth without making it into a report card? So you can, something that I did when I was working in schools in the past, what we did is we put together progress reports, which were more of like a narrative of the learning and development that we've seen take place over, you know, the past couple of months, or whatever, you know, whatever time, however much time had passed. And the parents really appreciated that. I actually had some parents even tell me it was so beautiful, I was crying when I read it. So that's one way you can put together a progress report that's more narrative. But I would also say there's nothing wrong with a developmental checklist, or with bullet pointing, you know, areas of growth, opportunities for, you know, what are we going to work on next? I think that's totally fine to do as well. Um, can you please give ideas for how to help children learn more things in less amount of time? In short, how to make their mood. Um, so I feel like perhaps this person is asking, um, learn more in less amount of time. So I would say, um, perhaps, lower the expectation of how much time it is, you know, needed. You know, again, I don't know what age group you're working with, but young children don't have long attention spans, and it's okay if an activity only lasts a few minutes. Um, that's why we repeat activities, and that's why we want to engage in longer, like investigations, more long-term project work and investigations that have a lot of repetition in them. And in short, how to make their mood. So as far as addressing emotional well-being, again, understanding the needs of the child. If they can't attend for too long, don't make them. Don't force them to do things that they're not ready for. And lean into what their interests are, and you know, their mode of learning. This is going to help them, and let them, and in doing that, you're letting them lead, and that's going to offer them a greater sense of autonomy and confidence in their learning, which will be good for their mood, right? How do you continue these lessons after age 5? Um, so project-based and you know, open-ended learning can absolutely still continue after age 5. You know, there are a lot of lab schools that take this on, where learning happens through collaborative project work. It is student-led, so that is absolutely a possibility. You would just um, implement into your curriculum more developmentally appropriate for after age 5 activities and investigations, and materials, and tasks. Hi, I have seen several photos that show lots of loose parts in the class. I know my group, they will put them all in the same place or pilot. Any suggestions? Thanks. Yeah. So, some loose parts can get mixed up and that's okay. But if it's necessary to, when it's necessary to categorize, that's part of their learning. So you can even make it, an activity that they sort their loose parts, right? That is a skill, to be organized. So that might be something that you just need to teach into and practice with them. It always helps to label, have lots of labels with pictures and with text, depending on your age group that you're working with and where they are developmentally. But labels in the classroom are so helpful. And you can make it a lesson, how do we sort our loose parts and where do we store things and how do we care for our materials? That is part of their learning. Um, and it might take time. All of these things take time. It's okay to give time and space to it. And it's yeah, let them be a part of their learning environment. Let them have a role in it. And yeah, that's okay. And you might need to repeat these activities over and over again. Could you provide some examples of taking observation notes? How does it reflect into the curriculum? So again, you just want to always have available to you a template or a notebook of some sort, some tool for note taking so that you can multitask and take notes as you go throughout the day. How much teacher facilitator to student ratio should you recommend for Reggio? I mean, this is going to vary. How much do you observe, or step back and observe? How much do you step in and facilitate? This is going to vary depending on your children and the activities they're engaged in. Facilitation can come in many different forms. It can come in the form of, your scaffolding questions. You might ask the child, why did you decide to, incorporate these materials into your work? Or you might facilitate in social dramatic play. You might facilitate in simply just the materials that you are offering or the provocations that you are offering. The way you set up your environment is a form of facilitation as well. How Okay, so someone's asking that I introduce myself a little more deeply. So yeah, so hi everyone. I'm happy to introduce myself. So I am Jackie. I am on the team of We Schoolhouse. We Schoolhouse, for those who don't know, grew from some schools in Manhattan that are Reggio Emilia inspired. So before joining the team of We Schoolhouse, I was a teacher. I taught pre-K in Manhattan. I went to grad school in Manhattan for early childhood education and special education. And then I became a director at one of those schools in Manhattan. And so although We Schoolhouse is young, I've been with this team for a number of years now. And we found, back when I was teaching and also acting as a director for one of their schools, which was 0 through age 5. We found that teachers needed more support in understanding Reggio Emilia and implementing these more holistic learning experiences, these more open-ended learning experiences in implementing longer term project work, in collaborating with families. And so to support them, we started creating materials, and then we we realized, well, maybe this can benefit more schools outside of our own community. And so that's where We Schoolhouse grew from. And I am very excited to be a part of it. So definitely make sure you check out our program, and we also have we have a full program. We also have a store available where you can purchase certification for joining today. You can also purchase other resources and materials, individual resources and materials. Yes. What? It's hard to implement. Learn as an educator. Okay, so someone is asking, I do want to answer a couple more questions before we finish up because we still have some more time. Oh no, the questions are jumping around again. It's hard to implement what we have learned as an educator and being in a regular classroom and having guidelines to master. Yes, it is. It is hard. I feel like we are, there's been so much emphasis on more rigid practices. And so, yes, we are, a lot of educators, and myself included, we are transitioning to try to implement more developmentally appropriate practices that are not necessarily going to cater to, even measurable goals, right? Like I can't, I remember so much focus on measurable goals in my lesson planning, and they are important. It is important to measure, to have a way of measuring development, but it's not always quantifiable, right? So yes, it is hard to implement. That's why we have to keep doing our research, keep having these discussions and engaging in discourse around new practices or practices that might be new to us and that might be resonating with us, like Reggio Emilia. With the little ones, how do you recommend to keep record of their progress? Observations is a form of assessment, anecdotal notes for the purpose of feedback to parents, but also for teachers to track their learner progress. So yeah, I mean, just engaging in that documentation, as I said, like having your anecdotal notes, having your developmental checklists as reference, and keeping a running log. You really want to keep up with it on a regular basis, so that you have it to look back on and to see what has growth looked like for each individual in your classroom. And then and you can use templates. You can use templates like a progress report template, or parent teacher conference template to help guide you in how to communicate with families around learning and development. When we started in September, new group, how can I implement the Reggio Emilia approach in our routine? Okay, so I would say a great way to start, if you're new to Reggio Emilia, a great way to start is in the activities that you offer in your classroom. You want them to be open-ended. And you want them to allow that space and that opportunity for children to show you through their play, what skills are they developing, what interests are they developing. That's a great way to start, really starting with those more open-ended activities. With loose parts and open-ended materials. Oh, okay. This is a nice question. What do you do with documentation of children's learning displayed in the environment after you move on? So you can share it with the families. You can send it home, share it with the families. You can keep it in the school. Sometimes what I've done actually is I take pictures of documentation for my own record keeping. But I like to send documentation after like a display is done. We're going to do a new display. I like to send it home to the families. They appreciate getting it. It's usually really nicely put together, and it's something nice for them to keepsake. Sometimes you keep it up in the school. I've been in schools where they have projects from, years prior, but it was just so special to the community at the time that they want to keep it up to honor it. How do we approach Reggio Emilia with special needs children? So the beauty in Reggio Emilia is that it's not rigid and it is so flexible that it's meant to meet the needs of any child, any learner. So you take the children in your classroom that have learning differences and special needs and cater to those. In however way it is needed. I want to see how the mirror corner it is. Incorporating mirrors is a beautiful way to enhance your environment, and a way to literally reflect on the learner, right? It is in a serious sense, it's beautiful to have mirrors for the children to engage in. Are there concepts that children need to rote learn that are taught in our school? What age is good to teach concepts that children need to rote learn? Right. So we really emphasize more experiential learning over rote learning. So what that means is, instead of like practicing writing out your name over and over again, you will engage with writing your name in so many different ways, like using you can paint, using paints, using I don't want to be a broken record, but using loose parts to write out your name, singing songs about your name. The same thing with the alphabet. We engage in the alphabet through experiential learning. So instead of using like flashcards to learn ABC and the sounds, we engage through, what sounds do we hear in our language every day? What do we think they look like on paper? What we look at signs and labels around the classroom and signs around our neighborhood, and we examine the letters as symbols, and they, over time, they learn it, but it's all, again, you need to give everything time, and repetition, and let them learn through experience. How do you assess and evaluate children learning outcomes within the context of project-based learning? So, I mean, the same way you would with any activities you have in your classroom. If it's, an activity that's a part of a project, a collaborative project, or not, you are going to observe and take notes as you observe. Again, using, developmental guides and checklists as a reference. What demonstrations of different skills are you seeing evolve as projects are being conducted? Do you use toys like cars or dinosaurs? Absolutely. Absolutely. You should absolutely have figures of animals and people and cars, all sorts of vehicles. Yes, yes, yes. Those are great for, you can use them alongside with loose parts. You can use them in block sensors. You can use them in sensory bins. You can trace them. You can make shadows of them. Please, yes, have so many different figures to play with and toys to play with. Is there where are we? Someone's asking if there's a good book to read. I'm going to assume you mean as far as pedagogy goes. And so there's a ton that I can suggest. So what we can do is we can make a list of books and literature around pedagogy in Reggio Emilia. How does Reggio Emilia differ from Montessori? I love this question because I get it so much. They're always being compared. So Reggio Emilia and Montessori both come from Italy. They their environments are similar because they're neutral and they try to avoid any sensory overload. Um, However, there are some very major differences. They're also both child-led, but one major difference between Reggio Emilia and Montessori is that Montessori materials are extremely specific, and they have to be, there are literal Montessori toys and materials that you can go and purchase that are made for Montessori classrooms, and they are meant to be utilized in very specific ways. The teacher will show the child how to utilize the various puzzles and other pieces. There's so many other materials that are part of the Montessori curriculum. However, in opposition to that, or differing from that, in Reggio Emilia, everything is open-ended, right? The children can, a classroom of 2-year-olds can, or a 2-year-old child can be given a basket of various tin upcycled bits, and they can build with it, they can make music with it, they can do whatever they want with it and just discover with it, right? So it's very different in that aspect. It's also very different because Reggio Emilia encourages collaboration, working together on projects, versus Montessori. There's a lot of focus on individualized work. So, there are strengths to both both approaches. We really love and admire Reggio Emilia and are most inspired by Reggio Emilia. That being said, Montessori does have some beautiful materials. I'm a huge fan of the whole practical life concept and definitely incorporate that in my classrooms. Do children have free choice, or just the activities, provocations you arrange? That's a good question. Okay. Yes, absolutely. There is free choice. So you would want to make provocations and activities available to them. You might have like, an activity planned for the morning, but no child is forced to do anything that they don't want to. Also, free play is so integral to an early childhood classroom. You must have time set aside for that unstructured free choice play. And your provocations, your loose parts, your open-ended materials are available in various centers for the children to choose to go to and engage with. Absolutely. When you set provocations, do you let children do what they want or explain how to do it? You want the material, ideally, you want the provocation, the materials there, and what you set out to provoke that engagement. So you don't go in and tell them what to do. You let them come and engage and start to discover and play with the materials as they wish, and you see where they go with it. How do you adapt Reggio Emilia principles to a home care environment where there's only one teacher and a small space that might be used for other purposes? I mean, there are so many aspects to Reggio Emilia that you can absolutely implement in a home environment. In the materials that you use, in diving into longer investigations. You can still be participants within your family, within the community. You can go out and engage in the community. Definitely being at home does not limit you in any way from taking Reggio Emilia principles and applying them. And how frequently do you need to do observation? I mean, I would do observation as often as you can. I would do observation every day throughout the day. As you're there with the children, you're always observing. And then you take notes as you can. Let's see. Any template for analyzing the report of a child? We Schoolhouse has templates available if you would like them. We have them available for purchase. It comes with our program. If you register for our program, we have templates for observation, for putting together reports. and developmental checklists included. What is the main difference between, okay, we talked about Reggio Emilia and Montessori. Hi, I set up a curiosity case with old luggage. Oh no, one way, there it is. With old luggage, we put old phones, old telephone, old clothes, open-ended materials, but children are getting bored. What are the enhanced provisions I should do? Okay, I mean, I would ask, are they not engaging in it at all? And what are they engaging with? And then let that be your guide. I mean, it sounds like a really fun curiosity case to me, but if they're done with it, then, I would look at what in the classroom are they engaging with, or when they were engaging with it, I would ask, what were they doing with it? Were they, I mean, it's funny. I mean, you might put out old luggage and phones and clothes and expect them to pretend like they're going on a trip or they're packing or, but then they start like creating, structures with it, So you have to see what is it that they did with it, or what is it that they're doing that they're engaging with, and let that be your guide as far as what you should do next or change about that curiosity case. Um, um, okay. Perhaps a question is, how do you get parent buy-in, right? How do you educate parents on the power of Reggio Emilia versus teaching into, they put in quotes, academics, right? That more rote learning. Um, yeah, I mean, this is part of our work as an educator, is, educating the parent and offering resources, um, uh, you get them in the classroom if you can, get them involved. The more they're involved, the more they'll understand it. Um, yeah, but yeah, that's part of our work. Part of our work is communicating with parents and offering those resources to them, and inviting them in to collaborate. That's how we get them on board. And the documentation has been such a wow factor in my experience. It is a beautiful part of the Reggio Emilia approach. So documentation also really brings that parent in. How can we learn to document and um Um, sorry guys, I'm just, any guidance on food play? There's so many ways to engage in play. I used to have, fruits and vegetables, obviously taking into account any allergies. So you want to always take safety into account first. But you can have, I used to have fruits and vegetables in, I had like a little science center, and they could like take apart the fruits and vegetables and examine them and smell them. And you could also cook, again, always taking allergies and safety into consideration, but in any way you can that it's available to you. You can cook with your children, you can write recipes with your children, you can taste different kinds of recipes of different cultures. I also used to have a classroom that was very culturally diverse. And so different families would share different kinds of recipes that they made. And there's so many ways to engage in food. Food's a great topic to engage in your classroom. And you can do it all year long. Um, What's the process of cleaning time? So again, this would go into your planning of transitions and routines in your classroom and how you structure that. It's everything is a part of their learning, so they'll learn, in the motions of transitioning from play time to whatever happens next. And they have to clean up, or they have to clean up when they're done with the task. That's something you just have to teach into through repetition and through your own modeling, and you're setting those boundaries. And that is a part of their learning, absolutely. Mm, um, how do we, what are the best places to find high quality materials that are affordable? So I'm not sure by materials if you mean physical materials to use in your classroom, or if you mean like resources. So We Schoolhouse offers resources to help with your implementation of practice. But as far as high quality materials that are physical, I mean, we use a lot of the cool thing about Reggio Emilia is that you can upcycle so many things. You can, you should get creative with that. Get creative with where can you find materials that are quality but that are affordable. You can go secondhand, you can reuse certain things. And as far as finding grants, that's going to be subject to your location. So I can't help you there, but I wish I could. How to prepare lesson plan for unit community helpers. We have some great investigations on We Schoolhouse for Community and Me. So definitely, consider looking into that in our program. And how do we? Strong push for academics in preschool years. How do you assure families their children will be ready for kindergarten without worksheets? So, yeah, again, this is a part of the way we educate and work with families, um, and reframing kindergarten readiness, and helping them understand that has a lot more to do with so many other key foundational aspects than just being able to write and being able to read. Those are actually not so important at age 5, right? It's their ability to, it's their intrinsic motivation to learn. It's their joy of learning and being in school. It's their ability to navigate social situations and to form relationships with peers. It's their ability to attend to a task. All of those things which come from more experiential, holistic learning rather than that rote learning. So it's a lot of educating to be done with the parent. And again, I emphasize offering them resources and bringing them in for collaboration, so they can see it for themselves. Great. Where do we receive the certificate? It's in the We Schoolhouse store. So if you go to the website and you go to store, that's where you can get the certificate for coming today or for watching the recording afterwards. So it is running a little late and I don't want to go too far over, but I also really want to get to everyone's questions and there's so many good ones. Um, um, so our school is in the process of transitioning to become more Reggio inspired. However, we have a set curriculum that we have to follow for math and language. How do we turn those into learning provocations while still keeping the children's interest and keeping with the principles? Okay, so, you know, I would look at, as an educator, I always start with, well, you have your observations, you know where your children are developmentally and where their interests are, and then you also with that you know what your learning goals are, right? What are your objectives? And so you want to apply all of that to a more open-ended provocation, and that's how you do it, right? You just want to make sure that you are not providing so much product driven or teacher driven activity versus you want the children to be active participants in their learning activity. So you can do that with any curriculum, any set of learning goals that you may have for your child. You just have to rethink the activity that you're providing to meet those goals. Any idea if you could do webinars. Any idea if you would do more about Reggio Emilia approach in an infant, toddler, and a multi-age environment webinars? Okay, we can, yeah, I mean, that is something that we can see if we can help you with for sure. I mean, multi-age, it's all about how you differentiate within your classroom. So, you know, and again, that's the beauty of Reggio Emilia, is that it is so flexible, so that it offers so much range for differentiation. And yes, we have a lot of resources in our program for infant toddler, so do check it out. And our program offers investigations for all age groups. So you can dip in depending on your child's development and all the different areas of development and range of within your one classroom, you know, right? There's a whole spectrum of where your children may fall, and they may all be different. So you can dip into, if you have a twos classroom, you can dip into, you know, younger toddlers, twos, preschool as you need to in our program per their development. I love everyone saying hello from where they are. It's so sweet. How do you reward preschoolers? So the cool thing about the Reggio Emilia approach, and the cool thing about engaging in investigations that are following their interests and the things that they like to do, is that you're creating an intrinsic motivation to learn and a joy of learning that's just coming from within them. So that in itself is the reward, like the learning becomes the reward. So yeah, so you don't need, you know, external rewards for them. Absolutely, you can support STEM education in Reggio. I think Reggio is perfect for STEAM because there's so much, you know, especially with the open-ended material and play, there's so much experimentation with like physical property and like how do things work together? How do they come apart? How do we deconstruct? There's so much STEAM integrated into it. And we do have a STEAM packet in our store if you want to check it out, that has loads of examples of that. I'm going to I'm going to answer maybe one more question, and then I'm going to sign off for you guys. But thank you so much for all of this engagement. I have collected lots of natural resources as loose parts and have them beautifully presented in baskets for the children to access freely. However, I find that the children are not interested unless I set up a provocation. What's your advice? That's fine. Yeah, it might just be the way you're displaying them. You know, find a way that you set them up in a provocation that catches their interest. You might need to incorporate a mirror or some drawing materials, you know, throw something else in there that's going to get them to engage with those materials. All right, I'm gonna end there, guys, because we are you know what, I'll do one more. I'm gonna go to 125. Okay. How important is it to teach letter formation, or they can write how they want? So the cool thing about this is that you don't really need to teach into it so much as, again, like experiment with it over the course of a long period of time, but not in a rote way. So with writing, I always like to start early with just they're making scribbles on a page. They're also exposed to text. They see text, right? You have labels in your classroom. There are signs, there are street signs outside, right? They have books in their classroom. They're exposed to text. They're seeing letters. They know what they look like. Over time, they're going to have better recognition of those letters, and they're going to develop stronger fine motor skills because of all the practice with drawing, because of practice playing with clay, manipulating small materials, all of those things that work into their fine motor. It's all going to come together, and they're going to develop better representation skills on paper, which is going to help with their writing. And you will see it develop without you having to teach them, this is how we make a letter A. This is how we make the letter B, right? It will evolve. You just have to start small and give it time to develop. And remember, that's why we do holistic activities. Thing, working with clay has so much more benefit to it. When you think into it, it's not just the clay itself. It's how it's helping the hands. It's how it's helping the representation. It's the sensory input. Everything has so much going into it. Um, all right, I'm going to stop there. We will have a follow-up with a deeper dive into the child. That's later in May, and then another deeper dive into the environment and the community. So a lot of these topics will come up again, and we can discuss them more thoroughly, and I really look forward to it. Do check out weschoolhouse.com. Check out our store, our full program. As get everything with our full program. You can get little snippets of it at our store. Check out our social media. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for coming today.